Hello everybody, I'm Matt Anderson and welcome to The Road Not Taken, how ordinary people get out of their own way and you can too. I'm very excited today to introduce our guest Beata Bukowski, who is based in Chicago, Illinois in the United States. So Beata, just if you wouldn't mind, just a few words of introduction about yourself, just so the audience can get a flavor for sort of your background.
Sure. Thank you very much for having me on your show. Beata Bukowski. I come from a little town in Poland called Łomża. I have grew up there until I was 16 and came almost at the end of the communism era in Poland here to the U.S. in 1989, and have been residing in Chicago since.
And then talk about just a few highlights on your professional career, which sort of explains why we're talking. So very humble origins, and then what's happened, since you got to the U.S. Thank you.
I have had the pleasure of meeting some great mentors, and so in 1992 is when I met my first mentor and probably my biggest influencer in my life. I joined a mortgage company, working for a mortgage company in November 5th, 1992. And since then, I have had the luck and the pleasure of reaching the top 200 loan originators in the U.S. For very many consecutive years. I have been in the top 1% of loan originators by Scotsman's Guide. I have been in the top 10% of my company's loan originators, and had the pleasure of working with very many families and helping them with their financing needs.
Thank you very much. So the initial focus is sort of to do with adversity, I suppose, in some ways. So I'm just curious, if you had to pick one thing that helps you most in terms of handling adversity, what would you say that is?
I believe that it's resilience. Beyond anything else, it's resilience. Being able to face anything that happens and just staying in it long enough until it becomes comfortable.
And is that something you like? How did you learn that character trait?
Personally, I believe that I must have been born with this, but it hasn't manifested itself until hard times came about. Mm-hmm. My first hard moment in my life, and this is in my personal life as a kid, was when my parents split up and my mother immigrated to the States, and I needed to make sense out of the entire situation. Only a teenager, it was quite rough, and then things just happen in business. Very many times, surprises come up, and this resilience just was born, not born, but it showed up. And as it showed up, I believe that everything I've accomplished was thanks to this resilience, being able to stay in the moment and being able to just face adversity.
Mm-hmm. Now, the people who are listening, obviously, there are plenty of people listening who might be slightly dismayed when they heard that you feel like you were born with resilience, because clearly, many of us aren't. What advice do you have for people to be more resilient? Because it is clearly a key character trait in getting anywhere. It doesn't matter no one gets there easily. That's such a myth. But what advice do you have for people? I mean, because I know I know you've managed people in the past and you have people working for you now. Mm-hmm. How do you help them be more resilient?
Resilience requires having, in my opinion, a higher purpose, a why. If this is what I'm. When I was growing up, my parents signed me, again, communist Poland. There was very, very little possibility of me actually leaving the country or even thinking of living anywhere else. Mm-hmm. My parents did sign me up for English lessons. This is a long answer to your quick question, but I took English, and then probably a year into learning English, I have decided that my job was to become a translator for the UN, and this was my entire focus. So resilience is born with making a decision of what your why is, of what is it that I want to accomplish, and then things as they come along the way, there are challenges. don't seem to be as big of challenges, and that resilience just keeps building. It's like a muscle; it keeps getting stronger as you are using it. So, to answer your question shortly, it is having the why, making a decision to follow it no matter what.
I absolutely love that. So having the why and making the decision to follow it. It's so what? Hang on a second. So, but your why then was different than your why now, or was it not?
It was not. It was not. So my why was I wanted to help the world, and this is very broadly said. I wanted to help the world, and the way I thought I could help the world is become this translator, be able to bring the Polish people to a better standing within the world, if you will, or within the world nations. Right now, my why is just the same. I am helping the people. I am changing the world. Right now, it's one loan at a time. Right. Back then, it would have been one translator, one translation, I should say, at a time, if it makes sense.
Yeah. I was very moved. Obviously, for the listeners, or people listening, I have known Beata for not that long, but I feel like it's been certainly a year and a half or so. So I saw Beata present on her business some time ago now, and I was very moved. It's funny. Well, what's funny for me is I've never been moved listening to a mortgage presentation before, but I was very moved listening to Beata, because I'd never thought of the paradigm that you presented when you spoke about growing up in a communist country and private property. I grew up in England, right? Never crossed my mind. So tell that story, because that's why I said I thought your why had changed. Because when you said, well, originally my why was to become a translator for the UN, I'm thinking, okay, well, obviously that's changed. But I love the way you said, well, it hasn't. It's just how I do it has changed. And but tell the story about, well, the why shifting to specifically helping people with buying property.
Sure. In communism, obviously, all was common property. There was home ownership, as we know it here in the U.S., did not exist, really, or at a very minimal scale. So being able to come to the States, and even if there was home ownership at the time when I was growing up in Poland, the home ownership meant if you had enough cash, and since everybody had equal, there was not really very many people that did, you could not own property. Property was government owned, and you simply were a renter. So coming here and seeing how easy it was to be able to, even for an immigrant, like my father, because my story with my adventure with the mortgage industry started by translating for my father at a loan application at his first home purchase. For my father, an immigrant coming into the States, barely speaking English, to be able to go in, get a loan, get a little money in a down payment, and be able to have something to call his own was life-changing. It was truly life-changing. And right now, about 40% of my clientele are still immigrants. They're not only Polish immigrants, but they're immigrants from all over the world, because to them, the pride of the home ownership is completely different than to those that grew up here in the States.
Yeah. And so that became, well, okay, so you finish the story though. So you helped your dad by translating when he was getting his first house, and then what happened next?
The loan officer that was at the application said that I needed to meet her boss, and she was so stubborn and telling me, you need to do this. Well, I was in college for psychology. I wanted to be a social worker. But she arranged an interview with her boss at that time. I came into the interview on Friday, and I started working for him the following Monday, the following week. Wow. And he is the person that I call my first mentor, my first business mentor.
And in what way did he help you most?
The easiest way to explain it is he believed in me before I believed in myself. He saw that resilience that I'm talking about so freely right now that I didn't think I had. So he gave me the sense of being able to realize my potential, and he just gave me some tools. And I had the work ethic, and that's why I am sitting here today.
Right. So I'd love to learn a bit more about what you mean by he gave me the sense that I could realize my potential. How?
He was my personal Tony Robbins.
Okay.
If I can say that. Through being able to just tell me, and he spent a whole lot of time talking to me, and first getting to know me, then to having me realize that that everything that I need to succeed is within me, and so I can't really tell you one specific thing that he has done that opened it up, but and this probably also comes from a communistic upbringing. It wasn't okay to show up bigger than your neighbor. It wasn't okay to have more than your neighbor, more not only materially, but in any sense of the word, because it could have been persecuted. It could have been looked down and be an enemy of the state. So until I met Steve, I don't believe that I came out of my shell. I was always just there, just trying to survive, just trying not to bring attention to myself. And he kind of helped me get out of that shell and start believing bigger.
That's absolutely fascinating. I absolutely loved it when you said everything I need to succeed is within me. And my first thought was, wow, you know, everybody on the planet needs someone like that to give them that message. And now here's a question. Does that person have to be sitting in the same room as you? Or can you, do you know other people that have taken on that belief by hearing it from somebody further afield?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It helped me that he was next to me, because there was a lot more attention spent specifically on me. But what you do, Matt, and with your message that you're bringing out to your listeners, that's exactly what you're doing. You're allowing them, by listening to everybody you interview, you're allowing them to realize exactly the same thing.
I will say this, and I don't mean to talk about myself here at all, but I have to say that there's something for me that's wildly more compelling about hearing how to get further ahead in life, hearing it from a real person like this in an interview. It really is hitting my core a lot harder than it does when I read the pages of a book. And I've been reading books for 20, 30 years easily, over and over and over again, and they've helped me a great deal. However, I do find this is a different dynamic, and that's why I was curious about Steve, your mentor. Like, what does it take for more people, more of us, to instill in ourselves that belief that we have everything within us to certainly do dramatically more and better than we are?
Absolutely.
What else has helped you? I mean, again, you're obviously, Steve didn't last forever, or Steve wasn't always in the room with you. What did you do in it, like, after that or beyond that, to reinforce that belief? Because obviously, we all get blindsided. We all have big problems come up from time to time. How do you, what else have you done beyond Steve to reinforce that belief?
I believe I started doing some personal development on my own. Yes, books. You're right. I was reading books. I was. I'll show you. This is my go-to. I'm not sure if you can see this.
The 5-minute journal. Okay.
The 5-minute journal.
Yeah.
I have been writing in this for about 5 years now or so, and this is my go-to almost daily. In all of the 5 years, if I have missed a couple weeks worth of collectively no entries, that's it. So this thing allows me to, and if for those of you that have not heard of it,
I've not heard of it actually.
This is my entry from today, but I'll show you a blank page.
Yeah.
This is very easy because it starts with a daily gratitude, things that you're looking forward to, and so every morning it helps me set my mind on what's important, but also set my mind on gratitude, what's great in my life. Because you said, like you said, there is challenges coming up, but finding the gratitude for me was probably one of those things that amazingly have helped me grow. I do strongly believe in coaching. I am now a member of the core coaching group. I am being coached. Surrender. There is no athlete. There's no good world-class athlete in this world without a coach or a trainer. So you cannot get good and stay good without somebody there helping and pushing, be it Steve sitting next desk to me, or be it a coach over a phone, or be it anybody else. But there needs to be somebody that I can surrender to and follow, so that my game will be better and better every day.
And is the focus of that 5-minute journal, is it gratitude? Because you also mentioned something about it sets my mind on what's important. So there are other...
Yes.
Who came up with that? Or who's the author?
This is written by, let's see, created by Alex Icahn and UJ Ramdas.
Wow, I've never heard of it. I mean, I do know that journals have become quite popular, like new versions of it have become popular in the last, let's say, 2, 3, 4 years. Different. Yes. I've been using the bullet journal and I love that, but that's something you kind of make up on. You know, there's a lot that's on your shoulders. This one sounds very prescribed. It is very
well organized and it's very prescribed. Yeah. So it's not hard to just surrender to it. There's 3 items in the morning that I put in that I'm grateful for. 3 items that I'm looking forward to in the day. This is what sets my mind up.
Yeah.
The right tone. And then there's daily affirmations. There's 3 lines of daily affirmations of things that I reaffirm to myself. After I do this every morning, in the evening, I come up with 3 things that were amazing that day and what I could have done better. So it is really a business journal, if you will, but also with that personal growth and personal gratitude built into it.
So, Beata, here's what's on my mind right now is, I don't know how many times you've been compared to Barack Obama, but one of the things that I remember reading about him on numerous occasions is the number of things he did as president, or I guess systems he put in place so that he didn't have to think about. So in other words, he had other people pick out his clothes. He only ever wore blue or gray. He had other people figure out everything he was going to eat. In other words, because he knew he had major decisions to make, and he didn't want to he didn't want to have his brain filled up or with minutia. And what I take from you, and this is slightly unfair on the listeners because you haven't shared all of these things, but in addition to, you mentioned the core coaching program that, the very, very, which is the most structured coaching program I've ever heard of. You've just talked about the 5-minute journal, which is also very structured. So in other words, it gets your head in the right place, but it doesn't require you to reinvent the wheel yourself every day. And then I know also, I'm pretty sure you've shared, you also have a personal trainer that you work with.
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the things I'm picking up from you now as I think about it are, the great thing about having a trainer is, we all know this, I guess, is just that you don't have to think about the exercises you're doing. Someone else has got it all figured out. You just have to show up and push yourself really hard. So talk about then when you're most effective, where is it that you're putting your mental energy?
The daily discipline. The daily discipline is where it is. I don't like to reinvent the wheel. I like to be able to have my systems built. And my most effective day is when I have my calendar printed out every day in front of me on my desk. I go from task to task to task. I know exactly, like you said, I never thought of it, but like Barack, I look at what I need to do, what I need to accomplish, and actually doing it. I forget the author of the book, Make Your Bed. That's what he talks about. The title of the book is Make Your Bed, because if you accomplish your first task of the day by making your bed, you already, again, have that mindset of being able to be task-oriented and just getting things done. So effectiveness to me is discipline, and it's a daily daily discipline.
Yeah. And so the daily discipline consists of, well, what else? What's in that day? You know, so for, again, those listening, not watching the video, so Beata held up a printed kind of example of her daily calendar. And then I'm quite sure, though, that you don't print that up and fill it out, right? You've got other people in your office
Yes.
that do all of that, right?
Yes.
So what are the activities in your daily discipline? And you've talked about the journaling, and then you've talked, and feel free to mention how often you have coaching or you exercise, but what's part of those daily disciplines?
My morning starts at between 4 and 4:30 every morning. I take time to write in my daily journal.
Okay.
I take at least 15 minutes for my meditation, and then I head out to the gym. I'm in the gym at least 3 to 4 times a week with a trainer, and then I also I picked up something I've loved, but I haven't been very consistent with it, and that's tennis. So I hired a tennis coach, and so I work out 4 times with a coach just for strength training, and then I do once a week for my tennis training. When I'm back from the gym, which is about 6 in the morning, I get my kids ready for school. I take my kids to school, and then I'm in the office. By the time I'm in the office, which is around 8 o'clock in the morning, I feel that I've already accomplished half my day.
Yeah, I believe it.
And so my day is filled usually with meetings with clients, meetings with referring partners, with some coaching. I have, and this is my passion as well, I love to share my message with as many as I can. So I have created a small coaching group where I meet with them every 2 weeks for about an hour and a half. And we go through, it's mostly steered towards business, specifically within the industry, but we also talk about, for example, personal family budgets. We talk about things that usually, and most of coaching, do not get touched at all. So that I'm feeling that I can help them grow into their better and bigger versions. Well, I humbly am as well.
Yeah, right. Helping them as well. And then what about the prospecting piece? So you mentioned client meetings, referral partners. I mean, I also know you've got sort of phone call pieces that are part of your daily disciplines too.
Yes.
Talk about that, because for many people, obviously many people listening are in sales or have that sales hat that they wear some of the day. You know, those calls are often the hardest part of it.
They sure are. My door is closed. And there's a sign on there saying from people that are approaching to my door, a salesperson in business, so that they know that not to interrupt. I have depending on a day, it's anywhere between 2 hours, anywhere between 1 hour to 2 hours daily of call time. The biggest thing on the calls is not so much, for me at least, making the calls, but I have my staff prepare the list, so I don't have to come up, again, reinvent the wheel, come up who I'm going to be calling. I just get a list, and I, like a soldier that I am, just follow the list, follow the discipline. And, you know, with my headset on, within 2 hours, there's a ton of phone calls I can pound. And this single-handedly was probably the biggest thing I have learned from the core coaching. What they have influenced me with is exactly that: time blocking for my prospecting, so that I can truly live my life the way I want. Meaning that when I leave the office, I'm done with the office. I am done. I am spent. I did my best, and I have time with my family, with my children.
What impresses me about what I've heard about the core coaching program, and it's funny. I mean, I'm not on this show to promote it, but having coached so much, when I hear about it, I mean, there's things about it that I admit don't appeal to me personally, but it is the fact that they've kind of come up with what seems like a recipe that really does actually work for people in the mortgage and real estate business. And Beata's nodding her head vigorously. And that's what impresses me, is that they really have been able to quantify that if you do these things, you will get this result. And because you're nodding your head, I guess there's no reason for me to ask you to affirm that. I think I have to talk about myself or be personal for a second. I think one of my own obstacles, and I know I'm not alone in this, is I'll hear suggestions of things to do to achieve certain results, and for whatever reason, I kind of have this do-it-yourself mindset of like, well, I'm sure I can find a different way to do it, or I'm sure I don't need to do it as much, or I can do it differently, or I've got better contacts, so I don't need to make as many calls, or so in a way, that's, I suppose it's slightly embarrassing to admit that, but regardless of that, how do you avoid what I think is human nature to somehow think, oh, I can do this myself?
Well, staying within the program, for sure, because I get punished, I get penalized if I don't do my calls. If I don't have, we follow something called the greatness tracker, and I'll be more than happy to share this with you as well.
Yeah.
It's this sheet that I fill out daily on all the activities for the day, and if my greatness tracker is not filled and it's not full, then I get penalized. And on my last coaching call, one of my colleagues was penalized $500. He needed to pay $500 to a charity because he didn't do his work. So, to your point, Matt, the athlete that does not have a coach next to him is never going to achieve his best times. Mm-hmm. At the London Marathon, the winner, what's his name, Chipanga? This guy, out of the last 13 marathons, won 12. He entered 13 marathons, and this guy won 12. Yeah. And he is on his pace, and mark my words here, I'm a marathon fanatic. Yeah. He's going to break the 2 hour barrier. He will. Mm-hmm. And why? Because when you listen to his interviews, all he talks about is having the best coach and being surrendering to the best coach. Huh. So can I do it alone? Yes, I could. Will I have a lot more justification as why not that last week, but why this week? Of course, yes. With my coach, I just have to.
So in some ways, though, and I'm not trying to split hairs here. I hope I'm not. Anyway, it sounds more like accountability than coaching, because I mean, coaching obviously is developing. Or maybe I guess it is developing you, but it's the accountability piece that you're speaking to the most. Correct?
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So there's two. At least for me, for coaching, and Steve, my first mentor, was exactly the same way. He was coaching, mm-hmm. but he also kept me very accountable. I also had to come in every week and show him my results, show him how many people I've talked to. And he did not hear of the core coaching at that time. That was years before core coaching was even formed. So coaching without accountability, in my opinion, is a miss. It's not really a successful thing. That's why even with my little group, with my little test, if you will, we do exactly the same. We keep ourselves accountable. Not only talk about how we're going to, but measure if we're going.
My experience around accountability is also that that person, they have to somehow have a certain way about them where you're afraid to fail in front of them. Because I think one of the things I've found difficult often, to be honest, coaching others, was holding people accountable, because I think I just sort of was a bit too nice too often, or too understanding about their excuses at the end of the day. And I deeply regret that. And it might be one of the reasons I'm doing this show in a way, is I sort of feel some guilt about the number of people that I coached that didn't get the results they said they wanted. Now, of course, you
are a very nice guy.
I can't do the push-ups for other people, that's for sure. But at the same time, what I'm trying to say is, what I'm trying to say for anyone listening is, if you do find someone to hold you accountable, and I think it's I found, I don't know, and again, it might be my personality, but you've got to find the right person that will hold you accountable. Yes. And and it doesn't get to be a situation where you end up being too nice to one another. I think that's the thing, where people don't really want to put others on the spot. It's where people pleasing comes up. But also, so what I'm trying to say is, it's almost like you don't want to be too good of a friend almost in that scenario, because you've got to have a situation where you can call the person to the carpet. I mean, I'm just thinking this out loud.
But you are absolutely correct. I agree with you.
So in other words, but you are comfortable then, presumably, holding these people every other week accountable, and you don't feel badly about it, and you're willing to sort of look them in the eye and say, what do you say?
Absolutely.
What do you say to them if they haven't done what they said they'd do?
Well, we've tried. There is a little bit of a group shaming, and I know I'm not very proud of this, but that sometimes works. We also have done a few times monetary penalties. You have to buy us all lunch if you didn't do your work, or if you didn't do your calls, or and we haven't gotten there yet. But I think reaching out to the family members of the person that you are coaching and letting them know what it is that for example, for people that you have been coaching, if most of the time I would say the family members did not know what the person being coached was set out to do, or what his goals were. So if you have husband's goals shared with the wife will be that accountability partner that will take off the hat from you. You will not have to be the nasty guy. It'll be the wife, it'll be the husband, it'll be the family member. And I mean, you don't have to be nasty to keep somebody accountable. But what I'm saying is, those family members are the accomplices in this success. Most time, they don't have a clue of what the person being coached is really set out to be wanting to do.
No.
So what I do is I'll write a note to one of their family members and say, hey, by the way, your mom said that this is what she's going to do, and if she accomplishes it, she's going to take you to Disney World. Do you want to help me get to Disney? Do you want me to help you get to Disney World?
That's fascinating. So not just awareness of the goals, but coming up with a goal to sort of further enhance it, to say if your spouse accomplishes the goal, he or she's going to come up with this kind of great
point of celebration. Yes,
great celebration.
Yes.
And then what did you say after that? Will you help me with this?
Will you help me help you get to Disney World?
Will you help me help? You mean help the spouse?
Yes. So if I tell the spouse and the kids, I did this specifically for one of the ladies who has a child. I wrote a note to the child asking if the child will help herself get to Disney World. And how? By keeping her mom accountable.
That's brilliant. Oh, how fun.
And I'll tell you, that stick in a child's hand over a parent's head is much stronger than any other discipline that I know of.
I'm just trying to figure out how I can use that myself, because I'd be lying to everyone listening if I said I couldn't come up with something. But it's interesting. I mean, what I'm thinking is when you're in a strictly sales profession, I can see that obviously you can come up with a clear, measurable that also has a clear outcome, because you think, well, if I make X much more, then I can afford to do this. So I absolutely love this is brilliant. I want to ask about fudging though, because there was one sort of difficult part of my life where it's a long story, but the short version is I ended up getting a sales job for a short period with a company, and I remember the weekly sales meeting, and but where I'm going with this is of course there were metrics that everyone was supposed to come up with, but it was one of those environments where you felt like just about everybody was making it up. Talk about that, because you must have experienced it.
For sure. But so with my greatness tracker, with what I submit to the core coaching every 2 weeks, I have to show the number of calls, the number of meetings I do for a week, but I also have to show the number of leads, the number of deals, and the number of closings. Okay. It is very hard to fudge the numbers if you say that you had, say, 70 talk to conversations in a week, and your leads show up at a few in a week. Right. Everybody knows. It's a direct translation. The more phone calls you make, the more leads you get. The more leads you get, the more deals you get. The more deals you get, the more closings you get. That's the bottom line. Mm-hmm. So the metrics are not only in originating the conversation, but also where did the conversation end up. So having those metrics in rather than just having a conversation minimum, I think would help any business.
And with some businesses, I would imagine too, though I'm thinking this out loud, that there has to be a fairly long time lag, because I mean, even for my, I mean, sometimes you're calling people and months go by before they get back to you or before they're ready to make a decision. I don't know if it's slightly different. Well, I don't know if it is different in your world, because you don't know. I mean, everyone you call, you don't necessarily know if they're in the market right now, or if they're planning to buy or sell, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. If I call a referring partner, and for me as a lender, my biggest referring partner community are realtors, real estate agents. So if I call on a real estate agent, that's my conversation that I put in my greatness tracker. Sometimes I have to call them every single week for even a year, 52 times in a year, before I see one lead from them. But so you're right, there is some incubation time between when the lead shows up and when the conversation is done. But all I'm saying is, if I have made those 60 conversations a year ago, then this year it should be that my leads will reflect it. So again, it goes back to the discipline. I can't make 60 conversations last week and assume that for the next year I'll have bread on my table, because I won't. So it's that discipline of the weekly activity. And yes, you're right. Calling on referring partners before they start referring to you is quite a lot.
How do you get your head in the right frame of mind day in, day out to make the calls?
What I think of is I think of all the telemarketers that call me.
Okay. And
so sometimes I'll start a conversation with saying, yes, it's another sales call, and yes, I'm going to be pitching to you, or something of that sort to take a little edge off of the conversation. But the way I talk to people and try to approach them is by simply saying, yes, I may be just a cold call, but let me get an opportunity to show you how I can help you grow your business, for example, or how I can help you change you, rather than let me get a deal so that I can help my world.
Yep.
And whenever and you know this probably as well, and you can confirm to this as well, that whenever we are showing our availability to help others, the conversation shifts to a different point. And sometimes they'll say, no, not interested. Okay, how many telemarketers have called me and I told them I'm not interested? No big deal. There's no personal feelings about that. Thank you. Next.
So you make cold calls still then? Is that what you're saying?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay, and that's but those are probably to people who have some kind of need demonstrated, or have been doing some kind of search online, or if it's a professional, they're in an industry where they have prospects that you could help. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
So so you're talking about cold calling real estate agents?
Yes. Yes. Real estate agents, some financial planners.
Buyers as well?
Buyers as well. Yes.
Yeah. Any other things that help you get your head in the right place? Because I must admit, well, I mean, this is not necessarily helpful, but your thing about telemarketers, that particular one, you've said many things today that sing and dance in my head. That one only doesn't, because I have such a negative association with telemarketers. The last thing I'd want to do is put that thought in my head before I started calling people as if, oh, great, no, I'm just going to be annoying people with something that they don't need or want most of the time, which is not what I'm suggesting about your situation, but that's how I think of telemarketers.
But see, my mindset when I think of the telemarketers is that if I get rejection, not for that rejection not to stop me from continuing with my calls, with my list, is what I'm talking about. Yeah. I have hung up on so many telemarketers, and I know that they haven't stopped after calling me. They continued calling. So for me, it is the connotation that it's okay if I get hung up on. It's okay if I'm not liked by the person that I'm trying to talk to. I just move on to the next. So that's where my mindset is thinking of the telemarketer, not necessarily of oh my God, I'm going to be so annoying because I'm going to be trying to sell something that I want to be sold on. More of my mindset. It's okay to hear rejection.
Did you develop this thick skin, or did you think that's something you've always had?
I think I've developed it throughout everything that has happened in my life. I have just, and again, it was a decision. It wasn't something that just showed up. It was a decision to accept what comes and the rejection that happens.
Yeah. I feel like you probably already answered what I'm about to ask you, but when you go to the sort of award events for people at the top of your industry, I love asking about this because, there's things that you experience. I suppose what I would say is the first time you went to sort of a top producer event, what did you notice that was different about the people that were there? Since I'm sure it wasn't their looks or their intelligence, what was it?
Although, and forgive me if I sound a little harsh here, most of the top producer people and most of the places I've gone to do show up differently. They do show up differently because most of the time there are the people that have trained their bodies. So there's not very often that you get to see a cross section of the general population, if you will, as far as their looks. So that leads me to my point. You can see the discipline in their eyes. Every single top producer I've always came across and looked up to had a couple things. Had discipline, work ethic that was immense, like uncomparable, and they all had a passion. They all showed a why. Because if you work a lot of hours and make it to success, to making a lot of money, you're going to burn out quite fast if that passion and that why isn't bigger than what the hard work entails. So probably those three traits is what I would say all of them have impressed me with.
It's interesting. I love what I'm hearing. And the first thing that comes to my mind is the negative stereotype around people in sales that, they're all driven by just making lots of money. And yet the third thing you said was, was the passion that everybody had, or sorry, there's they were based around a sense of purpose. Can you, are there other examples of other people's sense of purpose that you've discussed with others or share, or, that they've told you in terms of why they do what they do? Because I mean, obviously, they didn't all come from communist countries where private property was almost non-existent.
Right. Rick Ruby, the principal of the core, talks about leaving a legacy, leaving a legacy big enough where generations to follow are going to be able to take his systems into place and again realize their potential. So that's his why. Some other people's whys were slightly different, where they were talking about their personal family. They're allowing their families to realize their potential through either putting them through best schools or exposing them to a better environment, and so on. There was one gentleman that really, oh my God, I still feel warmth on my heart when I think about him. He has a daughter that was born with cerebral palsy. So she's never walked. She barely sees. She's always been in a wheelchair. And he, with all his success and all his money that he's made, he is giving at about 30% of his annual income to research on how spinal injuries in general, but specifically cerebral palsy patients can happen. Is this a why that could push him to do whatever it takes? By far, by far. And so he's not tired. He knows that his phone calls have to be made. He knows that the leads have to come in because he's working to towards humanity's, not only his daughters, but humanity's healing.
Wow. Okay. No, that's very, that's fantastic information. I know we need to start wrapping up here. There's one of the things that I want to make sure I ask you, I want to come back to this because you kind of almost kicked this off at the beginning when you talked about wanting to be a translator for the UN. Is one of the thoughts that popped into my head when you said that was, that doesn't sound like a typical child's way of looking at the world. And again, I don't want to lose the audience with thoughts like that. However, it sounds like, I mean, have you always had kind of an unusually high level of drive? And is that, would you say you have always kind of been pretty ambitious?
Yeah. Yes.
Any idea where that comes from?
Yes, and we're going to get into psychology here a little bit, but it comes, for me, it comes from the fact that my father was rigidly requiring of me. He always said I could do better. He always said that I could dream bigger. He always pushed me. If I got an A, why wasn't it an A plus, and so on. And again, maybe this resilience was already showing up there, because I know not most, but some kids would have caved in under such pressure. Yeah. Mm-hmm. That pressure gave me wings. That pressure helped me decide very early on that this is what I wanted to do. I wanted to be a translator. I wanted to have my wings spread out this wide, not just this little. But it was my father. It was truly my father.
Mm. Fascinating. Now, this is a slight tangent. I mean, did you have siblings that didn't respond as positively to that kind of pushing, or was he not the same way with them?
He was not the same way. I only have one brother. My brother's a few years younger. So my father's energies and the push landed all on me. My brother got away, although he's just as hardworking. So I think this must run in the family. Yeah. But he didn't get that pressure and that push as much as I did.
Wow, this has been amazing. Okay, so wrapping up, Beata, who would you say you've become as a person since the day you helped your dad translate on that loan back in your when you were in college? Who have you become since then?
I have become a person that is changing the world every single day, and I'm not making this too big. I take a tremendous pride in sitting down at a closing table for a lot of families buying for their first time, a lot of immigrants never having anything to their name, and buying a home. So I am helping the world by making home ownership so much more easy and understandable. I have also become a mentor is too big. I'm on my way too, hopefully. Yeah. But I am a sharer. I love to share. What has helped me, I am willing to share with everybody. And my little coaching group is exactly the example of it. I want to see that my imprint on the world will not be only from that of a loan standpoint, but that I can help every single person that comes across to me, from me, that I can change them, that I can help them change themselves.
And do you have any other plans beyond running your business? I mean, it sounds like you could go on and team up with Tony Robbins at this point.
You're quite nice. Thank you. I would love to. Yeah. I would love to continue my business till my last day on this earth, but I also want to continue making that imprint that much larger by touching other lives through coaching.
Fascinating. Okay. For people wanting to, make one more step today to change the world, to certainly be, leave more of an imprint, what would be a good first step?
The first step will definitely be the decision. The belief is the second, believing that they can. And third, applying daily discipline. And that daily discipline should start with making their bed.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so make the decision to become a much bigger, better person, believe you can, and then 3, figure out the daily disciplines required.
Correct.
Starting with making your bed. Love it. And then lastly, how can people keep in touch with you or follow what you're up to?
Absolutely. I am on Facebook under Beata Bukowski. I am on Twitter at Beata Bukowski as well. And I can also share my email. That's a good way to get in touch with me. And that's beata@beatabukowski.com.
Okay. And that will be spelled out also on the show notes. But for those of you listening, can you spell it out for people listening?
Absolutely. My first name spells out Beata. My last name is Bukowski, Bukowski. And
okay if I put your Instagram link on there as well? Because you have some inspirational stuff on that too, I noticed.
Please do. Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, Beata, this has been awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you
been
so
inspiring.
much.
You have an amazing bundle of energy this early in the morning, so thank you.
Thank you.
For the listeners, I'm just going to wrap things up as well. So again, there have been some fantastic insights and takeaways, all kinds today around coaching, accountability, systems, processes, daily disciplines, mindsets. It's a long list. So I'm looking forward to going back and listening to this more deeply and processing better. But make sure you take some next steps. Show notes are on the website, matt-anderson.com, matt-anderson.com. Other than that, subscribe if you haven't already to the podcast. Please leave a review, and I'll leave otherwise with my favorite question, which is, what would you do if you knew you couldn't fail? I'm Matt Anderson, and this was The Road Not Taken.